And then when you get the email, just send it to me and I can
Okay.
make sure it gets uploaded.
Okay. So just making sure you guys can hear me for the person attending from Zoom. Yes, okay, cool. Okay, I think we should get started. So today we have the pleasure to have Dr. Lianjie Huang from Los Alamos to give us a talk on super resolution ultrasound imaging and breast ultrasound tomography. So Dr. Huang is a senior scientist at Los Alamos National Lab. He received his bachelor degree in physics in 1985 and master in mathematics in 1989 from Peking University, and his PhD in geophysics from University of Paris 7 in 1994. His research encompasses geophysical imaging and medical ultrasound imaging for early detection and characterization of breast cancer and prostate cancer. He has mentored 21 postdocs and 23 graduate students, including 15 PhD students. He has been serving as PI and lab lead for 5 projects in medical imaging, 12 projects in geothermal energy, 16 projects in geologic carbon storage, 3 projects in oil and gas exploration, and 1 project on hydrogen storage, a lot of projects. He has been serving as the chair of the SEG book editorial board since 2019.
Great, thank you. So everyone can hear me, right? Online?
Yeah.
Okay, great. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you all for coming. And I'm going to talk about super resolution ultrasound imaging and ultrasound tomography. I don't know if anyone can see the pointer here. Okay, so, okay. I start to move, it seems. Okay, so first the acknowledgement. This is over past several, in fact, a decade, almost 2 decades here. And we have collaborated with many people from different organizations, including a lot of my former postdoc, and also King Hansen as a consultant. And I collaborate with radiology at University of New Mexico. They perform a lot of clinical study, acquire patient data for me. And then also collaborate with Harvard Medical School, and they perform a lot of the animal study in Alamos Cancer Institute, and also consumer advocacy. Consumer advocacy, most they are breast cancer survival, and including Erin Boquim from New Mexico, Los Alamos, and Peggy Devines is from California, Elizabeth Harris from Santa Fe, and Nancy Hawkins from New Hampshire. Hold on. Vermont, I think, or New Hampshire, whatever. Yeah, on New England area. And this work was supported by the breast cancer research program of a DoD Congressional Direct Medical Research Program. So here's an outline of my presentation. First, I'm going to give you some brief cancer facts and figures. And those who work on medical imaging, I guess you already know, after the audience is pretty broad, so I'll give you some brief cancer facts and figures. And then I'm going to talk about one of technology we work on since middle of 2000s, and that's a super resolution ultrasound imaging for detecting microcalcifications. And then I'm going to talk about breast ultrasound tomography. So here show the change of use death rates from 1950 to 2020. That's 70 years. And this is heart disease, and this blue is a 1950 number, and here is age adjusted death rate in United States. And this is basically show different disease. This is heart disease from 1950 to 2020, and this is stroke from 1950 to 2020. You can see all influenza here, and so all significant decrease. And overall, the decrease from 72 to 80%. From different disease, and this is a cancer death rates from 1950 to 2020. You can see that only decrease 25%. So that's the more challenging disease we need to deal with. So here is the estimate number of a new cancer case for 2023, and this data is from American Cancer Society. So total in the US estimate we almost close to 2 million new cancer case for 2023. And this basic map shows different states, what's the number. And here is the states are 88,000, over 88,000. And I came from here, Los Alamos in New Mexico is here. So here is the estimate number of new cases in deaths by sex in the US in 2023. All sides, for both sexes, as I mentioned before, is close to 2 million people. And male is about 1 million, and female is about 948. And that's like estimate new case. In estimate new case, breast cancer, at about over 300,000, and male about 2,800. And most of the female breast cancer is almost 300K. And that's the case. And that's why it's a prostate and lung and bronchus. And those are the most common new case of the cancers. And this male is 288,000. And this is about 117,000. And here is for female is lung and bronchus about 120,000. And estimate that both, for both sex will be over 600,000, and male about over 300,000, and female is 287,000. And this among these, total breast cancer estimate that will be 43,000, and male about 530. Female is over 43,000. And the prostate total, basically only male anyway, so it's about 34,000. And lung and bronchus, basically for male will be 67,000, for the female will be 59 or close to 60,000 of the estimate there. And here show the trends in age-adjusted cancer death rate. And this is from 1930 to 2020. And you can see that this is a lung and bronchial cancer death rate, and this is second is a prostate. And this is from 1930 to 2020. And for male, and this for female. And female also is the lung and bronchus also is the first leading cause, and second leading cause is breast cancer. And these breast cancers, these I want to emphasize, basically from 1930 and then to now, that you can see that only since 1990, and then you gradually reduce. So here again, basically just a highlight, percentage. And for male, this is an estimate new case. 29% of the new case are the prostate cancer, and then lung and bronchial is 12%, and colon and rectum 8%. And this is estimate death. Estimate death, 21% is a lung and bronchial instead of prostate. And prostate, you can see only 11%. Even the new case account for 29%, but the death only 11%. But for female, basically breast cancer case account for 31%, almost 1 in 3, right, of the new case. And lung and bronchial 13%, and colon and rectum 8%. But a female death, basically lung and bronchial about 21%, and breast cancer is the second leading cause, it's 15%, and colon and rectum is 8%. So in terms of lifetime risk, lifetime probability, or lifetime risk of developing cancer, here is a men and women. And men is basically 1 in 2 for all sides. Women is 1 in 3. That's the lifetime risk of developing cancer. Prostate for men is 1 in 6. And lung and bronchial is 1 in 16, and so on. But for the women, basically breast cancer is 1 in 8, lung and bronchial 1 in 17. So all sides 1 in 3. Here all sides 1 in 2. That's the difference. So basically male can get a cancer almost 50% higher, right, than female. And this is a trend of a 5-year relative survival rate in the US from 1975 to 2018. And all sides combined, you can 5-year survival rate at that time in the 1975 to 77 is only 49%, and now increased to 68%. But if you look at a different disease, you can see breast cancer at the early in 75 to 77, only 75%, and now it's 91%. So it's increasing, improving. And prostate basically at that time is 68, similar to the breast cancer. But it increased to 97 in the 90s, and then continues still in the 97. And lung and bronchial, that's the survival rate is lowest. It's now from 4% at that time, and now only 23%. So that's the 5-year survival rate is lowest. So here is the 5 years of relative survival rate by stage at diagnosis called SEER staging in the US. And they call it local stage, regional stage, and distant stage under SEER staging. And breast cancer, all stages 91%, but local it can be 99%. And even distant stage, only 30%. And prostate also distant, only 32%, similar number. And the lung and bronchus only 7%, even further reduced. So that means it's very important that you want to detect the cancer in early stage, in the local stage. So in summary, because today I'm going to talk about mostly on the breast cancer, so that's a summary of the female breast cancer. Female breast cancer is mostly frequently diagnosed cancer in women, account nearly 1 in 3 cancer diagnoses in women, estimate almost 300,000 new cases of the breast cancer in 2023. So women living in the US has a 1 in 8 lifetime risk of being diagnosed with the breast cancer, and 1 in 11 in the 1970s. So that's kind of increasing, that's over time. So it's the second leading cause of cancer deaths among women in the US. An estimate of over 33,000 of breast cancer deaths are expected in 2023. So as I mentioned before, this is the trends of age-adjusted cancer death rate, and for female in the US from 1930. Here's 1930 to 2020, and this is the breast cancer, the gray line here. So it shows, and this red line here I show is the death rate of 1930. So you can see that over decades, basically the breast cancer death rate is almost constant over time. But X-ray mammography started in the 1960s. So that created a question is what's the effective of the X-ray mammography, and only until recent year, recent decades, it decreased slightly. So that's the controversial, basically effectiveness of X-ray mammography is controversial. Basically, this started a paper in 2000 at the time by those 2 authors that questioned the effectiveness of X-ray mammography. They did a lot of the study showing that you do annual scan, biennial scan, whatever, what's the difference, what's the impact, and show there's not much impact, and that's why it's controversial. And mammography, the issue is this is the only screening tool for breast cancer, but it's less effective in dense breast. Yet women with the dense breast has a high risk, which is 5 times higher of a developing breast cancer. So those are the women need screening, but unfortunately, X-ray mammography is not effective for women with dense breast. And more than 80% of biopsy are benign with a combined mammography, MRI, and ultrasound exams. And that's a big issue. The estimate annual cost of 4 positive mammogram in the US was 2.8 billion. And annual cost of 4 positive blood biopsy is 2 billion. So, as I showed earlier, basically this is a 5-year relative survival rate by stage of a diagnosis. And you can see that, as I mentioned earlier, for breast cancer, if it's a local stage, you can get 99% of survival rate. Otherwise, distant only 30%. So that means early detection is a key to reducing cancer mortality. The cure rate will be nearly 100% if a tumor less than 2 millimeters in size can be detected. Normally, cell exam can be detected breast tumor is 25 in size of 25 millimeter, and average size of mammography can detect 12 millimeter in size. That means the new imaging modality for early cancer detection is needed. So I'm going to now talking about super resolution ultrasound imaging for detecting blood microcalcification. So blood microcalcification are calcium deposit within the blood tissue, and microcalcification with size normally is 100 micron to 500 micron. They are the first signs of the blood cancer in more than half of all cases for women over age 50s. And that's very common, right? And then the first sign is microcalcification. That's why sometimes mammography, radiology look very carefully on mammography, how many they want to identify, what's the size and how many microcalcification they can detect. And microcalcifications are found in an estimate of 50 to 75 all ductal carcinoma in situ, diagnosed using X-ray mammography, and approximately 90% of our clinical occurs ductal carcinoma in situ. So clinical study demonstrate that microcalcification may be associated with aggressive blood cancer. The reason is because if a mass in 1 cc, if you identify 4 or more microcalcification, that may be malignant, and then be careful. And that's why it's very important to identify. And another thing, currently, X-ray mammography is the only imaging tool routinely used for detecting microcalcification. And mammography has a disadvantage because ionized radiation uncomfortable because of a compression. The force normally is using up to 30 pounds, but sometimes it can be up to 50 pounds. Depends. They want to compress the blood. I think that's possible for mammography. So the question is, can we use ultrasound? And this is a conventional ultrasound basis of beamforming pulse cycle. They require 180-degree backscattering data. And you emit the ultrasound from the transducer and from the tissue, and then backscattering 180 degree. And what we want to use is called synthetic aperture ultrasound. Synthetic aperture ultrasound basically is you emit one element individually, and then acquire data, and then emit all transducer at the same time is changed to transmit receive mode, and then transmit receive, and then second one transmit receive, and so on. And then you combine all of the data together, and that's in geophysical imaging all the way using that, and that's the synthetic aperture ultrasound, starting 2000s. So at that time, when we started research, there is no synthetic aperture ultrasound equipment available. So we basically custom build this machine, and can do real-time synthetic aperture ultrasound data acquisition. So total is 128 elements, and provide radio frequency data, the raw data we can use to do the imaging. And frame rate can be up to 25 Hertz. That allow real-time data acquisition for patient studies, because for patient study, we need to have a real-time data acquisition. And that's why we're capable of real-time imaging, and that's is feasible for clinical application. So in terms of super resolution ultrasound imaging, basically we developed a suite of novel super resolution ultrasound imaging algorithm. And then we verify that there is different kinds of super resolution ultrasound imaging, but only one of them, basically we improve phase coherent multiple signal classification PC music imaging algorithm. And then with the compensation for the phase response of a transducer element is a robust algorithm for clinical application. We try all different algorithms. We found that you can work well with phantom data, but it doesn't work for clinical data. Your clinical data, that's just different. We found that we need to do some improvement in order to work for the clinical data. And we scan and image 40 patients at a University New Mexico hospital. So I don't want to go to detail how to do this imaging. Basically, this is patient we use, and then we use this term, including in addition to green function, we including phase response, transducer, and singular value of the inter-element response metric. And also, we don't directly apply this algorithm to the entire imaging domain. We use a small imaging domain and then it's kind of varied over the region and overlap and then to find a microcalcification. So now I'm going to show you one of the phantom imaging example. And this is basically one of the tissue mimicking phantom with a tiny glass field. And what you see here is a glass field. It's about 200 micron. And the important that you detect is a smaller microcalcification is 100, towards the 100 micron that range, because the smaller microcalcification is more aggressive, is thinner. And it's larger, is close to 500 micron that range. Larger microcalcification, normally they are benign. And that's why it's very important to detect small microcalcification. And this is a phantom using mammogram machine to scan them. You can see that all these cross field, white spot here, I can see here. And this is using our synthetic actual ultrasound machine scanning the image. You can see that resolution much lower. And give you some of them, for example, here, there are 2 of them, right? As I mentioned earlier, it's very important to count how many microcalcification, because within 1 cc, if you can detect a morning fall and it becomes suspicious, and then you need to further diagnosis. And you can see here, in this machine, basically you can only see 1, right? And then this, in fact, there are 2, and so on. That's why resolution is very important. And here is our super resolution ultrasound imaging. You can see that we can clearly identify. And you can see this resolution is compatible with X-ray mammography. Excuse me. So let's provide alternative. This is using ultrasound or super resolution ultrasound imaging for detecting microcalcification, alternative to mammography, because ultrasound is safe, there is no radiation, it's comfortable because you don't need compression, and that's an advantage, right? You can use an ultrasound. And if lab will be the case in clinical and all, that will be much more comfortable. And then also women will be more willing to do that, because currently a lot of women, basically because of the ionizing radiation and also the compression uncomfortable, and then a lot of them, they don't want to do the mammography screening, and this is making more comfortable. So that's a very, has a great potential. So I'm going to show you a few phase 3 patient example, and this is a 1 patient example. Basically, this one you can see that from mammography has a calcification inside and outside 10 millimeter blood mass. This is a blood mass. This is the mammogram, basically showing that in here. It's very tiny, I don't know, it's hard to see that, but radiology can identify there's a calcification in this one. And then we use this one as a target and then using ultrasound to scan it. And here is a synthetic actual ultrasound. You can see that, kind of a hint there, but it's not very clear. And that's this is a mass here. And that's the super resolution ultrasound imaging. You compare these 2, you can see that I can clearly identify those microcalcifications inside, outside this mass. This is a mass. And that's another example. Basically, is microcalcification within the 8 millimeter. This is 8 millimeter mass. You can see this one can see more clearly the microcalcification here, the bright spot here. This is a mammogram. And this again is the synthetic actual ultrasound. It's kind of the hint here, but it's not very clear. And this is our image. You can see that it's highlighted much better and much better resolution. And another example is a distributed blood calcification, and this one is everywhere. In fact, you can identify everywhere in this patient here. And this is the target. This is the area we scan. And this one called distributed blood calcification. It's an entire spread everywhere in the breast. And that's the synthetic actual ultrasound imaging. You can see that it's hard to identify microcalcification here. And that's our imaging. You can see that much clearly where's the microcalcification, and then you can see distribution entire region. So that's the improvement. So now I'm going to switch to the blood ultrasound tomography and show you some example. So we design and build a ultrasound tomography prototype for clinical study, and basically use to acquire both the transmission and reflection data. And then we translate a lot of algorithm from geophysical imaging to medical imaging, and we improve for medical imaging. And we also perform a patient study in University of New Mexico Hospital. So what we did, including step by step, because full waveform immersion, you need to do step by step. So including rate tomography using band rate, waveform in tomography, using entire waveform fitting. And the resolution of ultrasound rate tomography typically is about 5 ultrasound wavelength. Ultrasound wavelength, if it's for the, let's say 1.5 megahertz, because for tomography, you need to use a low frequency. What we use 1.875, but even 1.5, basically, the wavelength is about 1 millimeter. So 1 millimeter, and then that means the rate tomography is about 5 millimeter. But the resolution for waveform immersion is about half ultrasound wavelength. So that means only 0.5 millimeter, right? Remember, I mentioned before, if you can detect a tumor in smaller than 2 millimeter inside, cure rate is almost 100%. So that's has a great potential. That means, right? So that's why ultrasound waveform tomography has a great potential for characterizing blood cancer more accurately. So here I don't want to go to the detail. Basically, full waveform immersion is matching the waveform and then using different regularization algorithm. We have developed several new algorithms for regularization to match the waveform. And that's the clinical prototype we build basically for clinical study. And this is a data aggregation system, like 3 box here, and then 3 computer, and then there is a master one. Yeah, and then the transducer is inside here. This is the transducer here, and this is a parallel array. We have both a parallel array and a circular array here. And this is a closed loop of these 2 parallel array, parallel transducer array. So the distance can be adjusted. And here is a picture, basically we put in the hospital for patient study, and that's the electronic put behind, and the patient only see this table in the master computer control the data acquisition. And the system basically we built is the total 768 transducer element with a 384 parallel receive channel. So we use a multiplexing. And the distance between 2 transducer arrays adjustable to scan different size of the breast. And transducer array translate vertically to scan the whole breast. And as I mentioned, the center frequency we use 1.875 megahertz. And then we acquire synthetic aperture ultrasound reflection and transmission data. So as I illustrated here, for example, you have one transducer emit energy from here and then scatter by mass. And now you can get a reflection data and transmission data both. And circular array the same, you can acquire transmission and reflection data. And take about 2.5 seconds for each slice, including the movement, scan, data store, everything, about 2.5 seconds. And then we acquire, using this prototype to acquire patient data at University of New Mexico Hospital. So first thing, I need to calibrate this machine, and then because this make sure you move vertically and parallel without much error, right? So we do some adjustment automatically. And this one, the moving speed about 1 millimeter per second. And then the motor, without adjustment, you can have an error of 60 micron. And after adjustment, this is what you show here, this after adjustment, and both left and right transducer array. And then the error is less, about 5 micron, within 5 micron range. Yes, most of it. So that's accurate enough. And I'm going to show why we need a transmission, both transmission reflection data for tomography reconstruction. The tomography often use only transmission data. That's a typical use. And reflection data carry high frequency spatial information of the tissue. And that can help improve resolution. And now that's why we want to combine both the transmission and reflection. First, I'm going to show you one of the numerical phantom data. So this is one example. Basically, we use two small tumor. One is a 2 millimeter and one is 8 millimeter. The reason of 2 millimeter, as I mentioned before, that's the magic number, right? Because if you can detect a 2 millimeter or smaller, and then Q rate will be 100%. So we build the two of them, and then one adjacent to another to see how you can resolve them. So this is using transmission data only. You can see like cannot separate, it's merged together, right? Two tumors. And this is using reflection data only. You can separate, but you cannot image it, the entire larger tumor. And that's a combine. After you combine both reflection and transmission, you can very clearly, do the tomography image, show both images and get the, not only show the image, also that this is a value showing the one vertical profile. This using transmission data. The blue is the correct the sound speed, and the red basically is we control the sound speed. You can see that if you're using transmitted data only, you can separate these two because it's very close here. And transmission, you can see that this inside is not quite right. It's much lower inside in the middle, right? So that can be issue. But if you combine both transmission and reflection, you can see that can reconstruct very accurately of a sound speed of both tumor. One is a little bit larger, one is a little bit smaller. So this is a simple shape of tumor, but normally this is if it's round, they are mostly benign, so we are not careful. But mostly malignant tumor, they are speculate. So like this, so we build one of the speculated numerical phantom, and we have a heterogeneous background instead of this random medium, heterogeneous background instead of homogeneous. So this is speculated tumor, and that's a numerical phantom. This is our ultrasound waveform tomography, so I can see that now it can reconstruct very accurately of this one. Not only the background and also this speculated tumor. And that's the profile, one of the sound speed profile. You can see the sound speed, the background, and then the tumor can reconstruct pretty accurately. And this is a chicken, a phantom with 2 pieces of a chicken breast. We basically put in the gel, and then that's the beamforming result, and 2 pieces of the chicken breast. We scan them using the machine. And this is ultrasound waveform tomography. You can see the control sound speed. And in the shape also, you can see the shape. It's not homogeneous because chicken breast is not homogeneous. So we using this one to do the patient study. So we recruit patients for a population of patients who undergo workup mammography. So we already identify those at the workup mammography, those patients instead of the screening. So those patients may have symptoms or have had abnormal screening mammogram. That's what we mean. They already show it's a normal mammogram. So we scan 29 patients, only a few patients have blood lesion. So I'm going to show you a few examples also. Here is one of the mass shown on the clinical ultrasound. This guy, you can see that is a mass here. And that's using our scan. This is show multiple sessions. You can see that different sessions. You can see that spatial change. And that's another one is another patient is a mass is shown on the mammogram. That's shown here. This is what I look like, more like a speculate. And this is an image from our system, scanned from our system. And this is one of a tumor next to chest wall. This is a 3D tomography result, basically showing the sound speed distribution. You can see that higher sound speed. This is a tumor, and then here is close to chest wall, and this is a breast. And this is a sound speed distribution. And if I show you slide by slide, a few slides, you can see that this is a tumor, and this is a close to chest wall, and then away from chest wall, you can see that change. Right. So you can see using this slide by slide tomography, you can see the spatial variation in 3D. So also you can see that the inside the tumor is sound to be a little bit lower, and that's because when the tumor grow, the radiologist told me basically inside will become softer inside the tumor because there is no nutrition go to inside, becomes softer, and that's why it's not like a homogeneous. As we build and make funding, we assume it's not the case because when they grow, inside becomes softer. So you can see that slide by slide. That's the ultrasound, Brea ultrasound tomography. You can see, go through slide by slide. You see the distribution. So in conclusion, the super resolution ultrasound imaging could be an alternative tool for detecting blood microcalcification without ionizing radiation. The Brea ultrasound tomography have potential to provide valuable information to accurately characterize breast tumor. And that's all I have. Thank you for your attention.
Any questions from here?
Thank you, great talk. So in the microcalcifications work, I know some of the literature suggests that the composition of the microcalcification could be tied to malignancy. Is there any potential for the tomography methods to be expanded to quantitative methods to extract information about the type?
Yeah, that's interesting. In fact, not only in image lab, but also we didn't publish that, but we tried that. Also, this approach can get a density of the microcalcification. So density related to, as what you said, exactly, yeah. And that can be another additional value information, can provide for diagnosis. Yeah, it's a good point, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because here, what we normally use in sound speed, right? And then also there's a density issue, yeah.
Thanks.
So I have a question. So I've seen other groups use a ring array.
Right.
And here you're using two parallel linear arrays.
We also have a ring array, circular array, right?
You,
At the same time, that time we did.
okay.
And go ahead.
Is there any advantages associated with certain arrays? Which one do you think is
Yeah.
better? Or
Yeah.
doesn't?
Yeah, there's advantage, disadvantage, because ring array is a fix. And then the fix now is good or bad, right? Because it's for normal size of the breast is okay. But sometimes the breast is too large and then close to ring. You know that ultrasound, you always have a depth you can image it,
Right.
right? Because it's too close, touch that surface, you cannot image it, right? So that's the issue basically when you're too large, because you're fixed size, normally like a 22 centimeter for example diameter, right? It's a fixed size, and then it cannot adjust, and that's the issue, for different size of breast. A parallel array basically you can adjust the distance. And then for a smaller size, can be closer because you're too far away for a smaller size of breast. Also, it's not good, right? Because it's too far away. And that's why it's the advantage of adjusting to fit different size of the breast. But disadvantage is the coverage. Basically, you have a circular, you have a full coverage. That's better. So that's a trade-off. And then maybe it's kind of combination, maybe can be if you can rotate or whatever, But for example, there's a company, they built a two pattern, right? like a CT. Like a CT basically is like a two of them, 2D array, and then that's a QT, like the imaging basically using like this rotate. And another issue is also take a long time to do that because everyone you need to, but this is solid state, basically is easier, much faster, and clinically, to make it more feasible for clinical application. So that's an advantage, disadvantage. Also engineering, you can maybe, for example, design in a way to trade off these two, right?
Yeah. And for waveform inversion, you use FDTD. For the full wave inversion, you use FDTD to solve the full.
What's an FDTD?
The finite difference.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. Using finite difference, kind of finite difference. Solver, right? That's correct. Yeah, solve the full waveform, right?
Any question from Zoom? You can unmute yourself. You have questions to ask. Oh, sorry.
So Lianjie, great talk. So I'm curious. At the beginning, you showed the death rate from breast cancer, for example, kind of kept plateau at a certain period, and then in 1990s maybe kind of going down. Do you say because the algorithm or tomography algorithm improved cause that decay, or because what I don't think you mentioned that, but I'm curious.
I think that's a good question. To be honest, I don't know what's the cause. I think it's maybe since the 90s. I think you refer to this curve, yeah. This one, right?
Yeah.
You can see that, right?
Because technology actually is in 60s, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
You see that mammography. In fact, I don't know. Everyone know that mammography never got FDA approval. Yeah. So, but it's useless in 1960, start 1970. You can see that. That's why it's controversial. You can see that all the way, and then that controversial start in 2000 here.
Yeah.
And then US, in fact, Congress has a several, create task force, and it has some hearing basically, right? About, oh, what's happening? Do we need to do? I think recommend is after age 40 and then annual exam, right? And then later at some point, I don't know anyone know that they change to 50. And then because it is controversial, and then move back to the 40, back and forward. And then for example, Europe, where they change to biennial exam instead of annual exam. So that's why you see this is central mortality is fat over the decades. Right? And even year 90s, it seems to get slightly decrease. I think it's a combination, maybe better healthcare, better technology combination. I think, I don't think contribute to one factor, right? But never know. I don't know what's the technology, but nevertheless, because of the, as I show, lab mortality rate of different stage. If it's early stage, local stage, 99% or 5 year survival rate. So if you go to distant stage, only I think 30 something, like 33, 32 something like that. So you can see this distant stage basically you spread to other organ. So that's why it's very important to have an early detection. But the questions now mammography, mammography guide, in fact, I combine mammography, MRI, and ultrasound, all kinds of the exam. And then because normally the breast cancer, and before they undergo the biopsy, they always do all these kind of things, mammography, MRI, ultrasound, combined. And it show more than 80% are false positive, right? So that means, you just waste a lot of money and also create a lot of anxiety for patient and family, right? Because it seems that, you need to go to biopsy and then what's going on, it turned out false positive. So that's why you need a more accurate imaging modality for characterization. So this is combined effect. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe it's one of our research topic. I need to understand why. But I think it's a combination because it's a better healthcare and then better technology, right? All combination. And because, for example, mammography also digital mammography, also they show study digital mammography. Does it help? It's such a minimum. I saw the talk, it's at a minimum, so I don't know. But now has like a tomosynthesis, right? Like doing a scan from different angle and then do the hormone of the breast, right? So all of that, but the dose is increased. Normally it's like a double of the mammography. Even they already try to reduce the dose, but have to increase because you want to scan the multiple angle, normally 12 or 18. So, but all these new technology, I think help. That technology also, I think is about decades ago, it started. So all of them have a new technology, yeah. I think combination, but it's a good question, yeah. Thank you. Go ahead.
So you mentioned that 2 millimeters is kind of that magic number of early detection.
Yeah.
So I was wondering.
That in front of radiologist tell me.
Yeah. So I was curious just on and I'm not sure if you have the answer to this. I'm just curious. As far as clinical translation goes, because to detect something that small, you're going to need to be, scanning at a kind of a high frequency, like as far as like a time window goes to catch something that tiny. So I'm not sure about the growth rate of tumors exactly, but how frequently would you need to get these scans to try to detect something that small, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think two things. I think, as I mentioned, if you're using ultrasound waveform tomography, basically using waveform inversion, and then resolution can be like a 0.5 millimeter, right? I have a good resolution. It's enough for 2 millimeter in size, right? That's one thing. Second thing is ultrasound, because it's safe. There's no ionized radiation. So for women, especially applicable for those women with dense breast, because those women has a high risk of normally 5 times higher risk of developing breast cancer. So you can scan more frequent, basically. And you are right, some of them very aggressive. So instead of, for example, now mammography becoming annually or biannually, right? Like you can scan maybe 3 months or 6 months or whatever, right? More frequently scan. And if you can develop a point of scale approach, maybe not this one, other simpler transducer, simpler system. And then if you can scan at home, for example, point of case scan at home, that will be even more useful, I think. So it has a potential, but still not yet to achieve that goal yet. But I think it has a potential to achieve that. That's why I try to reduce the cancer mortality using new imaging modality. Right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You may have one in the online. See that? I don't know if that question or something. But,
On the chat.
oh yes, a question.
How about micro bubble injection imaging can help image microvascular, potentially provides more useful information and contribution. So not sure if you're familiar with micro bubble.
Yeah, micro bubble basically try to improve the contrast for ultrasound imaging. That's the contrast enhance imaging. But here we don't need that. Basically, the contrast microcalcification already pretty large compared to background because microcalcification is like a piece of rock, right, in the soft tissue. That's a really large contrast. We don't need that kind of improved contrast. But micro bubble typically want to image tissue, for example, because it flow to a tissue and then increase contrast, you can see more clearly. But here, I think for microcalcification, I don't think you need that because, and also another issue, tissue, you have a blood basically go to tissue, right? But microcalcification, there's no blood there. Basically just a calcium, just a piece of like sand, right? So there's no blood vessel to go to there. And that's why I want to mention MRI doesn't work. Because MRI, you need the blood flow, right? To flow there to get the imaging, right? MRI cannot use for microcalcification detection. Yeah.
I think the question is about there's a new technology called ultrasound localization microscopy, so which is also it's different from conventional ultrasound imaging using microbubble just as contrast agent. They actually localize the microbubbles that they flow in the blood vessel, but you just mentioned there's no blood vessel.
No blood flow to microcalcification, right. Yeah, but also they use for the drug delivery, right?
Yeah.
Microbubble because it can penetrate through the membrane. Yeah.
Could you please share some light on the inversion method you employ for US studies? How do you ensure that there's convergence of solutions? It's the good initial estimate to start. There's another question.
The full waveform inversion, what we use basically is we use a few different regularization, and then in fact, instead of the natural waveform, that's the original idea. Basically, in the natural waveform, we use a color correlation, of the waveform, and then we model but for field data. And how you can guarantee it converge? Basically, we start from synthetic data. The synthetic we test that is the algorithm converge. Because you can see that matching how well they are. So we show that it converge, and that's why we know it converge. Because for the patient data, we don't know what's the true solution. The only true solution we know is the numerical phantom, and now we can test that, and then we test it converge. And this question, segmentation, we don't do segmentation in microcalcification detection because microcalcification detection is a bright spot. You can see that very clearly. Segmentation normally is to try to segment a mass, right? It's mass boundary, it's not very clear. The margin is not very clear, and you want to detect where's the image. But for microcalcification, basically, you can see that very clearly from the image, so you don't need to do that. Their contrast is much larger. Okay.
I think that's all the questions. Let's thank the speaker again.
Yeah, thank you.